empowering you through the voice of truth with your host, Dr. Joel Hunter.
Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Joel Hunter, host of Power Talks, empowering you through the voice of truth. On today's program, we're going to hear from two really good friends of mine. I'm huge fans of these guys because they're such great leaders in our city. Bishop Kelvin Cabarrus, the lead pastor of Impact Church in Orlando, and Pastor David Jacques, pastor of the Kingdom Church in Orlando. And I'm looking forward to the wisdom they have to share about church working with a wide range of community leaders and ways we can all get better at helping other folks, especially young folks and at-risk youth in our community when it comes to Pastor David. But thanks for being on today, you guys. We have worked together on several occasions, and I'm really honored that you're here. You're here because you are the movers and shakers of this city, and so I want them to know who you are and what you're doing, and kind of how you got here. Both of you started at a very young age, by the way.
Yes.
Bishop, you were called at 5 years old.
Yes,
Holy cow! and ordained at 16 years old.
Yes.
Oh my goodness! First church at 18. And Pastor David, you were called young, and you've been in the ministry since 12?
Yes, sir.
Oh my goodness. And it says here that you had an inner city Bible study at Carver Shores at age 17.
Yes, I did.
This is just awesome. So let me just begin barraging you with questions.
Okay.
All right? You're called that early. How did you, was it just a natural thing? Bishop, let's start with you. Was it just a natural thing? 5 years old, what were you doing at 5 years old? Can you remember?
Well, at 5 years old, I was doing the opposite of what every other 5-year-old was doing. I used my cars, my Matchbox cars that my son plays with today, to create a congregation. And I would play church with my cars and was just in training for what I'm doing right now. Since I can remember, I have just been committed and called, and I would almost say born in the church.
Yeah.
So I've just been committed to serve the church for all my life and give the church my life.
That's just incredible. And how did you know?
Well, my mom had me at 46. My mom and dad weren't planning to have a child at that age. And she had a vision that this child would be a pastor. And ever since I was in grade school, everybody would say, "What do you want to be?" I'd say, "I want to be a pastor." They'd say, "Fireman,
right?
Doctor, lawyer." I'm like, "No, pastor."
Is that right?
Yeah.
Oh my. Now, did you go to school in Orlando?
I did.
Okay.
Yes, I did. I went to Dr. Phillips and then went to Belhaven College and University of Phoenix.
Very good. Very good.
Seminary.
And was your first church a Haitian church?
No, I was a youth pastor at a Haitian church,
Okay.
and then I merged over as a young adult minister to New Destiny Christian Center back in 2000.
Yeah, with Pastor Zach.
Yes.
And then this Kingdom Church that you have right now, pardon me, you got like 3 campuses, about to launch a 4th in the near future.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So we're launching one in Kissimmee. We have our mission is really to reach the unchurched. We do it in unconventional ways, and so one of the things that we do for example, at our South Campus, we have a home on our property, and one of the things is about economic empowerment. So we have a family live in the home for 6 months. They pay a rent. And at the end of 6 months, we return them their rent. While they're there, they get economic training, credit training, and help them get placed in jobs partnership. So we do different things to try to empower people to be better. So
see, I love that, because this program is all about people with power, helping those people without power. And you guys are premier examples of this.
Thank you.
And the fact that you're working with, Orlando is probably the most de-churched or post-church cities in the United States. But even without that infamous title,
Yes.
We still have a whole generation of people who just, institutional church is just not their deal. And so you've got to figure out ways to invite them into a spiritual community that really resonates with how they think. So thanks for what you're doing.
Thank you.
Bishop, I want to go to you now because you are, first of all, you're the president of the African American Clergy Council in the area, but I remember getting a phone call from you not too long ago when you were invited to be a part of President Trump's advisory council. How's that going for you?
Oh boy, Dr. Hunter, what a loaded question. It's been a unique experience. However, why I'm blessed is because of what this show is entitled about, being a voice for the voiceless and being able to use your influence to help empower others. And while some might get caught up in the fact that, oh, I'm a part of the President Trump's council, and of course in my community that's risky to go to the White House, I saw it as something bigger than me that had nothing to do with stroking my ego, but really being put in a position as a prophetic voice to the most powerful man in the world to speak on the behalf of others who would maybe never have access to speak to him, but be able to say something and prayerfully bring something from the table that would help empower all of our communities.
Yeah. Do people come up to you as they used to come up to me and say, hey, tell the president this?
Yes.
Yes. You get that all the time, don't
yes.
you?
They load me up with many things to tell the president.
And of course you don't. I mean, I didn't, go to and deliver all those messages. I'll say, well, but we do thank you for your surrounding him with prayer, and that's just it's a calling. No matter who the president is, no matter what party, no matter what policies, all of us need to pray for our president. That's just part of the ministry, Romans 13 ministry. And so, but tell me, what are some of the major, I want to ask both of you this, what do you feel are some of the major challenges that we have in our city? When you look, because I know both of you are city guys. You're not just, I'm going to just stay in my congregation, closed off from the world. You have a huge impact in the city, and you always have for years since I've known you. Everywhere I go in the city, people know of you, and so as you look at our city and kind of its challenges right now, what comes to your mind as far as what the Christian community or Christians in general could pray for or could be active in when it comes to the city? David, let's start with you.
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges for many is fatherlessness. I think we are so busy with our own schedules that we are losing a generation who is raising themselves. When I served as a mentor at Robbinswood Middle School, one of the greatest challenges that I found was students don't have fathers in the home. And mama's doing the best she can, going to work, and by the time she gets home, it's late. They're falling behind in educational endeavors, and it just matriculates into their lives. And so I think as a church, that's one of the greatest causes that we are facing, and we're also facing a great challenge with people who've dealt with trauma, and they don't know how to manage it.
Yeah.
And typically when you don't manage pain well, you medicate it.
Yeah, that's right. That is exactly right. We're seeing that too. Another huge challenge in our city. Let me dig down a little bit deeper on that. For people who say, I kind of thought about being a mentor in a school, but golly, it just sounds so overwhelming, and I don't know what I'd say. What was that experience like for you?
Well, I tell people all the time, people don't necessarily need you to be a teacher. They just want you to be a student with them. And we all are students of life, and we all have something that we can impart into another student. Yeah. And so it just changes our perspective on how we can impact other individuals.
Yeah, it's important. And most schools do have some sort of volunteer possibilities, the dividends program or whatever, where students that are looking for, an adult friend or someone to, complete, something that hasn't been around in their life.
Right.
Yeah, they're open to that.
Yes.
The schools are, because they care about these kids. Right. Bishop, what about you? When you look at the city, kind of what's the what are some of the larger issues that we need to be attending to?
I think I agree that Pastor John dealt with the foundational issues, which is family. I mean, we have lost our focus on the importance of family and the importance of having men and empowering our men to be leaders in the home, whether they're married to the mother of the child or not, but being involved and invested in the child's life, which leads to all the other systemic issues that we are faced with. But I think on a wider scope, as it relates to the city, we are still yet unifying but divided. We have progressed from the 60s, but yet as I look at the climate today, it is obvious that many have not left, removed from their heart the things that happened in those days, and they're trying to hit replay. And I think that as the church, we are the prophetic voice, and I mean all of us collectively that not only have to preach the message of love, but actually live it.
You know, when I saw you and the active part you took after the Pulse shootings, Bishop, I was really encouraged and inspired by that, because you were right there in the middle of that hurt from a couple of angles. You work with law enforcement or first responders as a chaplain, but also as a pastor. You were just there. Tell us about some of those experiences.
Pastor Hunter, that morning was, as I think about it now, I get chills when I got the call, and I immediately responded to come down there to kind of give support to the sheriff and the state attorney and the chief while they were there making their briefings. Being able to minister to them, because the first responders were coming out and it was obvious that they were impacted by what they saw with dead remains laid there in the club throughout the hours. But what hit me the most was when I went over to the hotel where all the family was waiting to hear whether their loved one made it. And the doctor announced, I was there when he said, if you haven't heard, they're gone. And to hear the screams, the cries, and people grabbing me. And I said, just hold me like a teddy bear. Just squeeze me till all your pain goes away. And the relationships that have been established since that time, because I officiated many of the funerals, and I still have a relationship today with those families that are still dealing with the trauma of that loss. And so it has changed my life forever. It has changed my perspective and philosophy about ministry beyond where I was in ministry, that I am just more targeted about being intentional in my impact of showing the love of Christ to people.
Pastor David, you deal a lot with the younger generation. The older I get, the younger every generation is to me. But this is a generation that is facing challenges that guys my age never faced, and issues that guys my age never faced, which is why some of them are issues today. And so you have probably more of an experience of walking alongside those generations that are in the midst of constant chaos and pain and trauma. You're bombarded 24 hours a day through the media with all of this conflict, and it's almost like walking through a war zone, and yet they don't have many of the traditional automatic identity anchors that people of my generation had. How do you navigate that with those folks?
Well, I think it's most important that before we get to conversion in the local church, we have to have conversation. And I think we have oftentimes done a great job at being so great at bringing people to altars, and we just leave them there, as opposed to having conversations after the altar. So I think this generation is authentically looking for someone who models Jesus but doesn't claim to be Jesus. And so that requires you to show your scars. That requires you to be transparent and to walk with people. I think that we have done a poor job of walking with people. It doesn't necessarily mean I agree with you, but I must walk with you in order to have conversation and build relationships with you. And so I think for dealing with this generation, they are not unified by the church. They're not unified by doctrine. They're unified by more causes. And so we have to do a better job of teaching them Christ, and a lot of times their view of Jesus is not the view of Jesus in Scripture.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
you have to almost represent them to a Jesus that they've never really known.
Let me follow up with that, Pastor. You both of you preach.
Yes, sir.
How do you help from the pulpit? How do you present that from the pulpit so that people see you as someone who is genuinely seeking Jesus like they are, and genuinely have struggles like they do, but yet you're the pastor.
Yeah.
You're the man or woman in some congregations who's supposed to be closer to God. How do you do that?
Well, I've demystifized the stigma of the pastor being the perfect one.
Uh-huh.
I always tell them I walk among you, but I am just like you. And so I think that for me helps our relationship and the expectation. I think a lot of times people get disappointed when their expectations are so high. And pastors oftentimes like to live in that bubble of expectation. And I had a conversation with our church a couple weeks ago saying, the expectations that you have are unrealistic. You have higher expectations for your pastor than you almost have equating us to Jesus.
Yeah.
Right? So it's just having authentic conversation to say, no, we have challenges in every area of life. My sister is a drug user, so I can relate to those who have had that circumstance. So when people see that, they're like, wow, I would have never known.
Yeah.
And so it's important for me just to be authentic. That's all I can give you.
Yeah. Bishop, I would think that somebody would look at somebody like you as an automatic authoritative voice. I mean, you're a big guy who speaks, with this, I mean, you're authoritative. I mean, you're a powerful person in physical presence and with
Strong voice.
Yeah, strong voice, great mentality, and great position in the community. How are people not afraid of you?
Well,
I thought that the description of yourself as a big teddy bear was that would have to come out of your mouth.
Right. and that's really what I try to present to people, that I'm a big teddy bear, because of course the presence will intimidate you to say, well, now I can't talk to him, and look how authoritative he is, and he's not approachable. But I try to dismiss that type of course, people who know me intimately know better than that. Yeah. But then as relates to my congregation and those who I influence, I try to make sure that, like Pastor Jock said, that I am just transparent.
Yeah.
I am real. When we come from behind everything, let's just talk. I'm a human being, so are you. Yeah. Life happens to me as well as it happens to you. Yeah. I've come from a broken home where my parents divorced, and so many can say, oh, I was raised by both of my parents. I was not. So I know the effects that has on me even today. Right. And so that I can relate to my congregation when it talks about family and why I'm so strong about marriage and staying strengthened and no matter what, hold together, because I'm a product of a broken home. And there are many different things that I've experienced that I think that once you become transparent and let people know who you really are, they put their defense down with you about who they think you are.
Yeah. How do you, because this is people listening face this also, but anybody in a leadership position really faces negative interpretation, feedback. People come sometimes with willful misunderstanding of what you're trying to do. How do you deal with criticism?
Ooh, that's when you have multiple campuses, you have multiple critics, right? I think one of the greatest lessons, unfortunate one, is as leaders, you can't always fire back at what you hear. Yeah. I think that if you address too many critics, you give them power. A friend of mine said, a dog can bark at the moon all day and no one has an issue. But the minute the moon barks at the dog, it'll be in the front page paper. So he said, keep shining and don't bark back. And so that's kind of how I utilize that philosophy. Some things are not worth addressing. Yeah. There will always be critics that misunderstand your motive or your intent. You just got to keep shining and doing what you're called to do. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, the moon has no light. Yeah. It just reflects the light of the sun.
Oh, yeah. How about you, Bishop? I know you get your critics.
Oh, tell me about it. I think that if you don't have critics, the question is how relevant are you?
Yeah.
And what impact are you making if no one is criticizing
That's
anything
right.
that you're doing?
That's right.
And with that being said, that has brought me to a place that I just, like Pastor Jock said, just tend to not respond to certain things. Now, the younger version of my ministry, I would bark back.
Yeah.
I will go toe-to-toe with
Yeah,
you
yeah,
about defending myself and my honor. But as I've grown in wisdom and grown in experience, I realized that God is a better vindicator
Yeah.
for you than you are.
Yeah.
And let the work speak for itself
Yes.
versus you trying to explain the work.
Well, it says that in the Word, doesn't it? You
Right,
know,
it does.
don't return evil for evil.
Right.
You know, God will repay.
And we're living in a generation that's so visceral because they are able to do it online. And there was a time where, you know, critics were just things that you heard of maybe if you passed through that area. But now it's all around you. It's
Yeah.
on social media. Anyone can say whatever they want.
Yeah.
And they feel like you can't reply, you can't retaliate. And so we call them social media thugs. And so
You got mugged on the media.
right.
Well, somebody once said to me, and I've always remembered this. You know, when I was trying to decide whether or not to respond to this one. You know, I mean, most of it you just say, you know, I just need to live more like Jesus, and then it'll all be settled.
Right.
You know, eventually. But there's some you honestly say, I wonder if I should answer this because this simply isn't true. But I was tempted to go toward my lower self, and somebody once said to me, you know, a dog can whoop a skunk, but it ain't worth a stink.
Yeah.
You know, so you got to gauge, is this really worth getting in that with those folks? I could probably win, but we both come out smelling,
Right.
you know, and so it's just not the thing to do. Well, let me go a little bit higher than this because I just wanted to, because as I said, everybody faces criticism. We only have a few minutes left. Boy, these things go fast.
Yes.
What are you looking to add both to the community and to the larger circles as time goes on? How do you see your future and what you uniquely can contribute? Let's start with you, Pastor David.
Well, that's pretty loaded. I think one of my passions is biblical literacy. How our view of Christ determines how we interact with individuals. So not just that, it's also economic empowerment because it's a lot easier to follow God when your needs are kind of met. Some would argue, when children of Israel had less, they were more committed to God, but it's easier to connect with God when you got a roof over your head. And so my passion is helping people discover their purpose. I think purpose is a response to a problem. And if God has put something in your heart, it is the reason He put it in your heart is so that you can exercise that. So it's creating a life that flows from God, but also creating individuals that also flow with what the gift is inside of them.
Oh, good. Bishop, how about you?
I think that mine is God has given me a voice. He's given me a voice and a platform and access to many different powers that be. And that message that I bring across the board is racial reconciliation. My heart has been broken for years to see the shape that we are in and we're growing in, and we keep hitting the replay. Instead of moving forward, we're going backwards. And I believe that there are a lot of different things on different levels that need to be addressed. And I just want to make sure that when I am at the table or in the room, whether it be a church, whether it be the White House, whether it be the city chambers or just in the community, that I am working hard to ensure that these race relationships, the issues are dealt with, the bridges come together, and healing takes place.
Yeah. That's I can so may your tribe increase, brother. I was part of the civil rights movement, the original one with Martin Luther King Jr., and I just keep looking at our society and I keep thinking, are we still here? And in many cases, it's more subtle, but it's just as bad as it ever was. So thank you for that ministry. And for the biblical literacy, oh my goodness. You know, if we can walk in the Word it's, that's the key. That is because racial reconciliation will be a worthy societal goal, but it's not until you have the love of Jesus that it becomes a realizable hope. And so thank you. I can't thank you guys enough for what you're doing in our community, in our country. You are big deals to me, and you're inspirations to me. As a very old man looking at two youngsters, there's great hope for our community. So thank you. Great having you on. So we're out of time, and I hate that, but I want to thank you and Bishop Cabarrus and Pastor Jacques. I love these guys. They're such great examples in our community. Thanks for joining us. And remember that these discussions are just that. They're discussions among us. We'd love to see you continue the discussions at home and go one step further. Get involved. Because when power talks, you are empowered through the voice of truth. See you next time.
You just watched Power Talks, a Good Life 45 original production that makes you part of our Hope Team here on Good Life 45, where hope happens.